Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadari. Yasoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Yasoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamuni Tira Vanatari. Jamuna Tira Vanatari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. Gopijana Vallabha Girivanadari. Yasoda Nandana Vrajajana Ranjana. Jamuna Tira Vanatari. Tira Vanatari. Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna 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 Hare Hare. Hare Rama 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 Hare Hare. Hare Krishna Krishna Hare Hare. Hare Rama Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. Jaya Radha Madhava Kunda Vihari. Jayo Raro Madhava Kunja Bihari Rara Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramhanta Priya Jigacharya Siddhishikam Divine Grace of Ajadan Bhakti Vedanta Sai Maharaj Srila Prabhupada Ki ISKCON BBT Founder Acharya Guru Srila Prabhupada Ki Ananda Kota Vaishnava Vrinda Ki Nam Char Srila Haridas Thakur Ki Prem Shri Gaur Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Dvaita Gadadhar Shiva Sari Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Ki Say Sri Radha Krishna Gopinath Shama Kunda Radha Kunda Giri Govardhan Ki Vrindavan Dham Ki Mathura Dham Ki Dwarka Dham Ki Navadvip Dham Ki Jagannathpuri Dham Ki Chamuna Mai Ki Ganga Mai Ki Tulsi Maharani Ki Bhakti Devi Ki Samveda Bhakti Vinda Ki Srila Prabhupada Ki Say Sri Radha Kirti Ki Shri Krishna Sankirtana Jaga Ki Gopremanande. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to the sum of devotees. All glories to divine Lotus feet to see Guru and Gauranga. You guys can see that easily from a distance? It seems like it's getting smaller. No? No, whatever. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Krishna Svedamo Bhagate Dhamagana Dibisaha Kalanasa Dashumesha Parano Kodinodita Narayana Namaskritchandaram Shaivam Naromotama Devim Sarasatim Vyasam Tatojaya Mudirayat. The Bhagavatam, Mrs. Brinda's son, is arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied with knowledge, religion, etc. Person who lost their vision to the dense darkness of the age of Kali shall get light out of this Purana. Before beginning our study of the srimadbhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, we should first offer respects to the personality of Godhead, Narayan, to the Narayan Rishi, the supremmost human being, the goddess of learning, Mother Saraswati, and the author, Srila Vyasadeva. Hey, Bhakti Zach, can you get me one of those cushions? Because I spent 2 months in Southeast Asia, and this is like frigid. At least for my conditioned nature. Let's see if it works.
You want some socks?
Huh?
You want some socks?
That's another issue we could talk about sometime. There we go. Okay, we're going to chant text 68 because that's the one with the purport, and then we'll read the other verses. We'll go back. Narad uvacha ma sucha sva tanayam deva guptam vishampate tat prabhavam avigyaya pranvikte yad yaso jagat naruvacha mama sucha tanayam devaguptam vishambate tat prabhavam avigyaya pranvikte yad yaso jagat naruvacha mama sucha svatanayam devaguptam vishampate tat prabhavam avigyaya pranvikte yad yaso jagat Narada Uvacha Mama Sucha Svatanayam Devaguptam Vishampate Tad Prabhavam Avigyaya Pranvikte Yad Yaso Jagat Naruvacha Mama Sucha Tatanayam Devaguptam Vishampate Tat Prabhavam Avigyaya Pavrinkte Yad Yaso Jagat Naruvacha Mama Sucha Satanayam Devaguptam Vishampate Tat Prabhavam Avigyaya Pravrinkte Yad Yaso Jagat Naruvacha Mama Sucha Svatanayam Devaguptam Prasambate Tat Prabhavam Avigyaya Pravrinkte Yad Yaso Jagat. Mataji? Naruvacha Masucha Satanayam Devaguptam Vishampate Tat Prabhavam Avigyaya Pravrinkte Yad Yaso Jagat Naruvacha. The great sage Narada said, Ma, do not. Ma, do not. Shuchaha, be aggrieved. Svatanayam, of your own son. Devaguptam, he is well protected by the Lord. Vishampate, O master of human society. Tat, his. Prabhavam, influence. Avigyaya, without knowing. Pravrinkte, widespread. Yet, whose? Yasha, reputation. Jagat, all over the world. So, just to stay in the, follow the storyline. This is the king talking to Narada Muni. O dear Brahman, the face of my son was just like a lotus flower. I am thinking of his precarious condition. He is unprotected. How old was Dhruva? 5 years old? Yeah. So picture a 5-year-old boy all alone in the forest. He is unprotected, and he might be very hungry. He might have lain down somewhere in the forest, and the wolves might have attacked him to eat his body. Alas, just see how I was conquered by my wife. Just imagine my cruelty. Out of love and affection, the boy was trying to get up on my lap, but I did not receive him, nor did I even pat him for a moment. Just imagine how hard-hearted I was. The great sage Narada replied, My dear king, please do not be grieved about your son. He is well protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although you have no actual information about his influence, his reputation is already spread all over the world. So also you say, the great sage Narada replied, My dear king, please do not be aggrieved about your son. He is well protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Although you have no actual information of his influence, his reputation is already spread all over the world. And Prabhupada's purport. Sometimes, when we hear that great sages and devotees go to the forest and engage themselves in devotional service or meditation, we become surprised. How can one live in a forest and not be taken care of by anyone? But the answer given by the great authority Narada is that such persons are well protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. Saranagati, or surrender, means acceptance or firm belief that wherever the surrendered soul lives, he is always protected by the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is never alone or unprotected. Dhruva Maharaja's affectionate father thought of his young boy, only 5 years old, to be in a very precarious position in the jungle. But Narada assured him, quote, you do not have sufficient information about the influence of your son, end quote. Anyone who engages in devotional service anywhere within the universe is never unprotected. Om Ganata Vrandasya Gana Gana Salakaya Jakshushrimadatangena Tasmari Shri Gurave Namaha. The fact of the matter is that there is a underlying angst. There's eating, sleeping, mating, and defending, and Prabhupada would sometimes describe defending as fearing. And he actually said of all of these four anxieties woven into existence in this world, fearing is the most pernicious, pervasive, and punishing. So, and everyone's looking for shelter. They find shelter in their family, they find shelter in their nation, they have shelter in their bank balance, they have shelter in their, everyone's got some kind of in their physical strength, or their John Wayne, that I'm a self-made man. So everyone has where they've taken shelter. And if we do a compare and contrast, the king, he's very well protected, apparently, isn't he? He's got his army, he's got his treasury, he's got so many things. Influence, allies. I mean, if you were to bet on it, who would you bet on? Would you bet on the 5-year-old innocent boy in the forest to come out? Who's better protected? The king with his soldiers and guards and ministers and palace and treasury, cavalry, elephants, we could go on and on, or the little boy in the forest. Who do you think's better protected? Well, naturally, we would calculate that and there's Bhagavatam has so many sweet compare and contrasts. You have Hiranyakasipu, whose Haranya means gold, Kasipu means soft bed or sex. These are he had these in good stock and was attracted to them. And he raised his eyebrows and all the devas would tremble. I think everyone but who? Brahma and Shiva had to surrender to him, and Narada. Everyone else had to follow him. Is it? So just imagine. And then you have Prahlad. Prahlad was an innocent boy. And who came out victorious at the end of the thing? Who was completely, although put in so many difficulties, Prahlad came out just fine. And Hiranyakasipu, as Sridananda Maharshi, is the brief surgical operation which the patient did not survive. He was finished off. So, Prabhupada gives a nice comparison. Where did our video go? He's doing something with the sound. I think it's Prahlad and also the 4 Kumaras when they're talking to Prithu. So in 2 different places, it said that even in spite of the best of boats, what happens? What's going on? We're okay. Hey, we're okay. Even in spite of the best of boats, what happens? Anyone heard of the Big T? The Titanic? Actually, there's 2 stories about the Titanic. Both are true. We all know the one of it sinking. In fact, there was one of the Astor family, which is at the time one of the most wealthy families in America and in England. And she wouldn't take her jewels off. And when she got in the boat, she slipped, fell out of one of the lifeboats, slipped off the edge. They could have grabbed her, but she had all of her diamonds and jewels sunk literally like a stone. And there were some Irish coming over, and they had them in steerage. Steerage means that, you know, you're just down on the lower decks and take care of yourself, you know, in the more or less in the what would you call it, the bowels. I was thinking of there's another word for it, but I can't think of it right now. But in the bowels of the thing, and when the ship sank, because of their hubris, they didn't have enough lifeboats. They thought, well, we're the unsinkable Titanic. So they just locked. Everybody was in steerage on those lower decks. They just locked them in. They just locked the gate because, you know, let Lady Astor and the others off the deck first. So there was a young man who, to get out, because the anchors are there, the anchor chains, and they grease the anchor chains to keep them from binding. You know, big, you can imagine the huge chain. So he took that and he greased himself so that he could squeak through the ventilation system and get up to the upper decks and get out. So he did. And because he was covered with grease, he didn't die immediately, because the water, you know, you'd freeze within a couple seconds. But he was insulated, so he was able to flop around for 4, 5, 6 minutes, and they pulled him into a boat and survived. So anyway, so the point is that Lady Astor, she sank like a stone, in spite of all of her money. But the interesting, so in spite of a big ship, big boat, sometimes you know, thing goes down. And then there's also example that you can have a good captain, so many things. Sometimes you can have good parents, good birth, good parents, and the child goes bad. I mean, there's so many spoiled sociopaths that are, you know, went to Andover or Exeter or graduated from Harvard or whatever it is, you know, went onto the stock market and became very Madoff and cheated everybody. And then there's like Beethoven, I think he was the 16th or 18th child, some 13th. I mean, after a certain point you lose count, but an impoverished family. So, you know, no formal education in the beginning of his life, impoverished parents, you know. And the mother was either a widow or had been abandoned by the husband. So you can imagine his condition. And yet materially he gave some of the best music in the world. So in other words, it goes back and forth. In spite of the best doctor, sometimes the physician, the patient dies. Right here, there was a Bengali man. I don't want to mention the name and embarrass anybody, because I think we're being broadcast. But he went for a tonsillectomy, you know, which is an outpatient. You know, you're in there for half an hour, local anesthetic. So the wife dropped him off, come back in an hour and pick him up, and she went shopping at the mall or whatever her little errands were, and turns out that they nicked a nerve. They nicked a vessel. That went to the brain. The guy went into a coma and died right on the table. She came back to pick up. They were going to go out to lunch afterwards, or I don't know what they were going to do, but, you know. And they said, well, I got a little bad news for you, Mrs. So-and-so. Your husband's dead. So there's examples like that. There was a big, he was a banker, I forget his name, here in SanDiego, and had a cerebral thrombosis, as Prabhupada says, you know, had a stroke and went into a coma. And everybody thought he was going to die. And many doctors will tell you this. In fact, you can ask our Kulin Tantot. He told me it's true. That one of the last senses to go when you're dying is hearing. They'll lose balance, they'll lose sight, they'll lose the ability to speak. But not always, but often the last sense to go is the sense of hearing. So this guy had a coma, had a stroke, was in a coma. Everyone thought he was going to die. He was over here at Scripps. But he was hanging on in the coma. And but he could hear, but they didn't know that he could hear. And the adult children were arguing, hey, pull the plug, because they all wanted the inheritance. He was a wealthy man. And the wife, you know, was already moving on to the next. She was flirting with a nurse. I mean, well, that could be too, but flirting with a doctor. So she was already moving on to the next. And the guy came out of the coma, turned around and came out. divorced his wife, disowned the children, married his nurse. So, I mean, I don't recommend that as a course, but the point is that there's another factor, there's another element in the whole thing. In spite of the best of parentage, the child goes bad. Sometimes with no parents, the kid turns out all right, does something wonderful for the world. Best physician, you can drop dead. No physician, you're given up for, I had a friend in elementary school, was given last rites. Our teacher said to pray for Bobby, I forget what the kid's name was. Made an amazing turnaround. Catholic priest came, gave last rites. Kid turned around and came right out of it. So the point I'm trying to make is that everyone is, or Prabhupada tells another story. This is Prabhupada's story, that a rich man, his daughter's getting married, and anyone who's arranged a marriage, any father who's arranged a marriage for the daughter, so many things have to be done. It's a major experience. So the rich man sent his servant into the marketplace. That please you just, a long list. And being a bona fide servant, the servant was going to skim a little off here, skim a little off that, buy some bangles for his wife or whatever, so the servant was very happy. Servant goes into the marketplace, and there in the corner, beckoning him is who? Death personified. Come here, come here. So you can imagine, the servant completely panicked, raced back to the house of the rich man, explained the situation. Rich man said, okay, I have another house in Hyderabad, Secunderabad. I have another house in Secunderabad. You just take my horse and you ride to Secunderabad. You'll be safe there. And I'll go shopping. So the rich man goes in, marketplace, sees death personified, begins to chastise death personified. So, I sent my servant in here and you scared the daylights out of him. Now I got to do all this. I had so much to do. He begins chastising death personified. And death personified is very apologetic. So, no, I didn't mean to cause you grief. I was just surprised to see your servant in the marketplace because I have an appointment with him in 2 hours on the road to Secunderabad. Ha, 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 ha. It's Prabhupada's joke. So, but, the point is that this world, just like this young boy, Dhruva Maharaj in the forest, we know the material world's compared to a forest. And what is it, the Forest of Material Illusion, the 5th canto? And so many things are described there. But in so many ways, there's wolves, there's tigers, there's small things, mosquitoes, people who criticize us, we can't see them, but we hear, criticize behind our back. So the point is that this world, it's on fire. The whole world is on fire. So, and it's a dangerous place. This world, although we may lull ourselves into some kind of temporary stupor or illusion, but it's a dangerous place. I remember when I was, one of the first conversations I had with devotees, you think I'm arrogant now? Should have seen me then. And I thought, jeez, I just stay on the conveyor belt. It's all going to work out great, And devotee said to me that as we parted, the devotee, he said, this world's full of suffering. I said, well, maybe for you, but I'm having a great time. He said, there's one thing. He said, nobody gets out of here alive. And I said, I thought, it rattled around in my brain. I thought, he's completely correct. That nobody gets, whatever you have. So it is a dangerous world that actually, if one's awake, what is that saying? That if you're not paranoid, you haven't been paying attention? So, Hare Krishna to you. This world is a dangerous place. Actually, if one's thoughtful about it. One of my favorite examples is if you look up in the Oxford English, synonyms for happiness, it's about 2 pages. They say that language, like Eskimos, have so many words for snow or ice because it's such a predominant factor. So they say that language is the expression of the consciousness of the culture. What you don't experience, you don't talk about. You don't have a word for it because you don't need a word. Whatever's predominant in your experience, you have a lot of nuances, different words, because it's a predominant part of your experience, right? Okay, by the same principle, if you go to Oxford and you look up happiness, you'll find about 2 pages of synonyms. If you look up suffering, pain, 12, 13 pages of suffering, of synonyms. So what does that mean? If I have 2 pages of happiness, satisfaction, and I have about 12 pages of suffering, what is the conclusion? It's the predominant factor of experience. So if we're actually honest about it, it's nothing to write home about, this material world. And we're all looking for shelter. But what shelter is there? Prabhupada says in a later purport, Eko bahonam yovadadati kaman. Anyone know what that means? Nitya nityanam chaitanas chaitananam. So we're all eternal. We're all independent on one hand. Swara, But what does Ek, other than Dravida, who we know knows? All right, go ahead, Dravida Prabhu.
But out of the many conscious living entities, there's one who is providing the necessity for you.
Maintaining everyone else. So we see that not only did Dhruva Maharaj, was he protected, but rather he became famous throughout the universe. What he wanted a planet, a kingdom better than his father, right? One-upsmanship. Great was it? I think it was, yeah, actually it was a great guy. So, but what happened? He got a whole planet with Lord Vishnu. Yes, never destroyed. Polestar. So, simple point is that if everybody's looking for shelter. We're all looking for shelter. But the fact of the matter is, the only shelter is Krishna. And Prabhupada describes Nectar of Devotion and a couple other places also, Daya Bhak. Daya Bhak, Prabhupada defines as a rightful inheritance. That, if you're the elderly son, of course now I think it's any children, and your father is well-to-do, all you really have to do, Prabhupada says, is stay alive. Outlive him, and by natural course, you're going to inherit it. So Prabhupada said in the same way, if we just faithfully serve Krishna, Prabhupada used to say, if you stay on a boat, whether you're in the bilge, that's the word I was looking for. Whether you're in the bilge or the bowels or the lower decks, or whether you're on the rigging, in the crow's nest, wherever you are, you're in the stern or the bow. If you stay on the boat, what will happen? You'll arrive in safe harbor. So it doesn't, wherever you are in ISKCON, as long as you stay in the boat, Prabhupada said, as long as you stay in the boat, you'll arrive in safe harbor. So we have that confidence. What was Dhruva, 5-year-old boy, within 6 months, what happened? He saw Krishna. And what was his qualification? His qualification was that he strictly followed the orders of his spiritual master, Narada Muni. Narada Muni told him what to chant, told him what to eat, told him what his yogic process was. He said, you do A, B, C, D, and you will see Krishna. And what did Dhruva Maharaj do? Strictly followed A, B, C, D. And what happened? He saw Vishnu. It worked. He took the formula, followed it. Similarly, Prabhupada, Senapata Bhakta, empowered by Krishna, he's given us a process. You don't have to it's very good to do it, but you don't have to be a Sanskrit scholar. You don't have to be a great yogi. You don't have to... Is TM still around? Remember when they were meditating, you could levitate? They claimed, but there was never any proof of it. So you don't have to be a big yogi. You don't have to be a big genius. You don't have to... In fact, quite often these things are blocks. They're the natural trinadapi sunichena. But the point is that if you just follow, just like here it is, he strictly followed without any deviation. Another thing is you may think, which is sometimes it's a cause of discouragement. We think, well, I can never do it. I'll never make it. It's too difficult, to become Krishna conscious. And somebody falls down, some so-called big sannyasi falls down. Well, if he didn't make it, I'll never make it. The mind is such a cheater. The mind will tell you, well, why even waste your time? Cash in your chips now. Go and enjoy, so-called enjoy. Because if he didn't make it, and he didn't make it, she didn't make it, you'll never make it. Or whatever. We think, geez, I'm struggling. For what it's worth, it gets easier. I can tell you frankly. Once you get past, I would say, 40, 45, I mean, on the deathbed, the guy's looking at the nurse, so, I mean, it's not, but generally speaking, the senses become a little easier. I mean, when you're I'm just saying this for the young men, when you're, I don't know what, up till 30, and the senses are burning they're going pretty fast. But it gets easier. And also you get a taste, you get some confidence, you feel Krishna reciprocating, you say, hey, this may actually work. But the point is that with Dhruva Maharaj, when he saw Vishnu, he didn't, and he's a 5-year-old boy, he wasn't able to offer sufficient prayers. He was stunned in ecstasy and inexperienced. So what happened? Anyone know what happened? He did offer beautiful prayers, but how did that become possible? Yes, Bhakti Zach. Krishna touched him with his conch shell and empowered him. So on one hand, if we just strictly follow the process, we'll be successful. And whatever our shortcomings, Krishna will help us. Krishna's kind. He's Karuna Sindhu. He's not Karuna Bindu. Is that? Bindu means drop? Yeah. So he's not a drop. He's a Sindhu. He's an ocean. Bindu and Sindhu. It rhymes, doesn't it? That's coming in a poem from Dravida.
It's actually a nice verse I can share with
you. You shared it afterwards. So the point is that just like Daya Bhak, Prabhupada says the mentality of an advanced devotee, he's thinking, whatever I'm suffering from, it's a token reaction for something I've done in my past. I was saying to somebody that when my marriage blew up in smoke, a true moment here, an Oprah moment, the wife took off, but the mother-in-law stayed. The mother-in-law, she's initiated devotee. She's a disciple of Srila Prabhupada. My daughter's taking her to Vrindavan. She's like 92, Maharani. So, I mean, what kind of karma is that? The wife goes, and she was, it was interesting. She was quite demanding. So, how was that? And I remember it hit me. I thought, I must have in a previous life stolen some nice Vaishnav's wife and really messed up his family. And now it's falling on my head. I'm getting, a token reaction for something I did in the past. And it actually gave me a lot of, I got the kids. Kid turned out all right. So, all's well that ends well. So, or that well ends. So the point is that one who thinks, okay, whatever's happening to me, it's a token reaction for misdeeds in the past. Also, what is the purpose of this world? It's not just row, row, row your boat gently down the stream, merrily, merrily, merrily. Life is but a dream. But the suffering that's coming, it's coming by, what does Kunti pray? That may the sufferings come, because it's cutting attachments. These sannyasis, we have a mantra that in the English translation is, let the sufferings of this world come. What? I thought the whole point was that, I become relief from suffering. Religion, they either want reward or relief. They want the 100 versions, or they want, cure my cancer. So they want, relief or whatever it is, reward. So how is it that someone's praying, let the sufferings of this world come? I'm just going to leave it there. No, the verse says, because that suffering develops detachment. You develop detachment. Well, what do I want detachment? We know Om Shanti. What is this sound of one hand clapping? Why do I want detachment? Because the last line of the verse is that detachment will be the boat that carries me across the ocean of birth and death to your lotus feet. So suffering breeds detachment in a thoughtful person. If we have good association, we can think about things. There's different types of intelligence. Different process of learning. One can learn by hearing. When hears, like we're Narda Uvacha. We're hearing from these great saints and sages and realized souls who know the practical nature of this world. So we can learn by hearing. What's another way you can learn? You can learn by seeing. There's a progression. The best intelligence you learn by hearing. You hear from Shastra, you hear transcendental wisdom. Oh, that's it. Okay, that answers that. Or we can learn by seeing. Oh, that guy did that, Like when you're a kid, I remember my son. He's a good kid. But whenever he'd be on his skateboard or his bicycle, he'd say, oh, watch this. I think, oh, man, this is not going to end well, So one can learn by seeing. You see someone do something and get burned, you think, well, I'm not doing that. So you can learn by hearing is the best. Otherwise, you can learn by seeing. Then you can learn by, as was mentioned. Yeah, you experience it. Well, that was, like, what's the what could go wrong? Well, about 15 things could go wrong, So, learn by seeing, learn by hearing, learn by seeing. Then, otherwise, you can learn by bitter experience. And what's the fourth less intelligence? Yeah, even you hear, even you see, even you experience, still you do it. So, one who thinks, okay, because this world is, as we were saying, the predominant experience actually is suffering. Well, whatever's happening, and I surrendered to Krishna, why is this happening? Either it's a token reaction, or it's a learning experience. Krishna is sending something down the pipe, so I learn from it. We learn to be patient. I'm not a very patient person. My neighbor moved in with a little yap dog. Yap, 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 yap. We're nonviolent, all that stuff. I was going to strangle that dog if I got an opportunity. But, realizing it's not the dog's fault, so I managed to control my senses. And probably I would have gone to jail, or who knows what would have happened. So I restrained myself. And after a while, when I just got used to it, all right, here it is. They moved. Dog's gone. So, it's a simple example, but Krishna puts us in difficult situations. I wanted to go on book distribution. I wanted to go out and preach. But the temple president, I was the temple commander, so I could never. And I tried to get out of it in so many ways. I got other people to do it. I trained them up. This guy blooped. This guy ran off with somebody, whatever. So I always kept coming back to being the temple commander. I thought, all right, I can't get out of it. I might as well just surrender to it and do a good job. And I surrendered to it, did the best job I could. And then in about 3 weeks, another devotee came, took over the service, and I became the Sankirtan leader. It was Krishna's mercy on me. So, but my simple point is that difficulties come, and if we see, it's a token reaction for something I've done in the past, or we think, and it's a learning. Why has Krishna put me in this position? Instead of trying to fight it, and who is it? Is it Lear from Shakespeare? On the moor is raging at the wind, and cursing his situation. So are we like Lear and just cursing at the situation? Or we think, well, let me learn from it. Let me turn it to my advantage. So, and one who feels like that, who knows that Krishna is the ultimate shelter, Krishna is maintaining everyone. whatever I'm getting is token reaction, whatever I'm getting is for a good lesson, that person becomes peaceful. That person becomes self-satisfied. That which I actually wanted. The king chucked his son because he thought he'd enjoy with the wife, and in the ultimate issue it caused him the greatest misery. And Dhruva, who just went out and took shelter of Krishna, got the greatest benefit. So we should learn by hearing. Okay. And one last thing. If one takes up that surrendered mood, Prabhupada said he never was alone. They said, oh, you came to New York all alone? Prabhupada said, I was never alone. I always had my spiritual master with me. And Prabhupada tells the story of, it's Sridhar Maharaj, who was thinking about taking sannyas. He was a householder, and he wanted to take sannyas. And thinking about it. And then his wife became pregnant. He thought, what am I going to do now? Now I'm stuck, you know? And then the wife died. And he thought, oh, what do I do with this child? Now, how can I take sannyas? I can't just abandon the child. And then he saw there was a mother, and the mother got killed, and a little baby lizard fell, and it fell right in front of him. So he's looking at the little, and just as the little lizard was there, an ant walked by, and little lizard ate the ant. What did the man conclude? Krishna takes care of everyone. So he, made an arrangement. The aunt or uncle, someone took care of the kid, and he took sannyas. I'm not advocating abandoning your children, take sannyas, don't get me wrong. Those of you who are out there just, right there at the keyboard, ready to send me the email. It's Prabhupada's story. You can sue Prabhupada, don't come after me. But the point is, of course we do our duty and all that, but the point is that actually Krishna is maintaining everyone. So one who knows that, token reaction, learning experience, Krishna is actually maintaining everyone, such a person becomes kind. Here we're talking about the hard-hearted. He was so hard-hearted that he chucked his own son off his lap and let him go to the forest. But a Vaishnava who feels like this, Daya Bhak, is completely satisfied. He thinks, Krishna's taking care of me. If some difficulty comes, I deserve it. Token reaction, it's education. So therefore, when I was a kid, I promise we'll end here. They say that who knows, but they used to say that we only use a certain percentage of our brain. You ever hear that? What did they say?
They say like most human beings can go up to 3 to 4% of their brain.
Something like that. Yeah. I remember hearing. But whatever it is, just accepting the principle. I remember thinking when I was a kid, geez, what if I used my whole brain? Would I have X-ray vision? Would I be able to read minds? I used to when I was a kid, I was thinking about it. So, but if our brain is not full of how can I satisfy myself, lamenting my lot, scheming how to come out on top of others, to the point of the cruelty of chucking even my own son. If I'm not feverishly cooking up my latest scheme or overwhelmed with lamentation or anger, if all that was out, what would the brain think about? If we were confident, I've got Krishna, due course. Prabhupada was sitting in the airport. And if someone asked him, are you liberated? Prabhupada said, just like I have a ticket. When the plane comes, I'll get on the plane. Even the plane's delayed, even it's canceled. Because you got a ticket, the airlines is duty-bound to get you, wherever the destination is sooner or later. So Prabhupada said, because I have a ticket, because I'm initiated devotee, chanting 16 rounds or more, whatever, following my principles, because I've got my relationship with my bona fide spiritual master and I'm following, sooner or later, I'll go back to Godhead. So when someone has that profound understanding, realization, he becomes peaceful. Like I was saying, the brain is cleared. Then what is the brain filled with? Because nature abhors a vacuum. If I'm not thinking about myself, maybe I'll be thinking about others. And Prabhupada said, I think I mentioned the other day. Well, anyway, just quickly. The Jayapataka Maharaj told me this. Prabhupada's standing at the end of the balcony of the Lotus building. He's looking over at something. Jayapataka Maharaj, naturally, what is Prabhupada looking at? Comes up, and he sees that Prabhupada is watching. The pit was there where they threw all the leaf plates and cups and everything, And there was a family there. There was an old lady, some kids. They were shooing off dogs. They were fighting with the dogs in the trash pit, finding a little khichdi stuck on a plate, a little clay cup, a little bit of dal in the bottom. So Prabhupada's looking at it. And so Jayapataka Maharaj said he stood there for, seemed like quite some time looking at the scene. And he said, Prabhupada, sometimes I feel so sorry for these people. Anyone know Prabhupada's answer? Why just sometimes? So we, especially now with Christmas Marathon, New Year's Eve, we're going to go out, Harinam, book distribution. Our problems are solved. It's only time is separating. Prabhupada says like a green mango and a ripe mango. What's the difference separating the two? Only as long as the mango remains attached to the tree, it's only time. Time is the only thing. As long as we're attached to the sampradaya and devotional service, it's only a matter of time. And time goes by just like this. So our problems are solved. So therefore, let us feel compassion. Let us help others. And the heart becomes very big. So we can end there. Yes. Well, I want it just to soak in for a minute. So our problems are solved. Let us be kind to others. That will really, not only do we come to shanti, of peacefulness, but actually when we engage in the service of others, the heart becomes very sweet, becomes very blissful. So it's worth it. Okay, now, Bindu Sindhu.
The drops of honey trickling from the two lotus flowers of Lord Nandanandana's feet are so many oceans of transcendental bliss. I pray that those drops of honey may eternally delight my heart.
Where's the ocean, though?
The drops, they're dripping, but they're actually oceans.
Okay. On that happy note, Hare Krishna.